Sometimes they're called carbon offsets or carbon credits, but essentially what all those terms mean is the measurement and verification of an action that reduces greenhouse gas emissions in one place that can then be quantified and sold or traded to counteract against other emissions that are occurring in another place or within another company or structure. I was really lucky in around 2008, 2009 to join a company that was working on developing greenhouse gas offset projects in Alberta. And the impetus for that company doing that was because Alberta was one of the first jurisdictions, or maybe the first jurisdiction in North America, to have an operating trading system for greenhouse gas credits. I was really interested in working in the climate change field, and it really aligned well with my background, which is in environmental engineering and the technical work going into how to measure and quantify those greenhouse gas emission reductions. I learned a lot at that position, and we were able to develop new protocols or methodologies, which is what we call the guidance document that tells you very specifically what to measure and how to calculate greenhouse gas emission reductions or emission credits from a certain activity or project. And then we also were able to do some projects in Alberta that required us to collect all the data, calculate everything to register and verify those greenhouse gas emission credits. So working the right place, the right time, and being in Alberta when that was happening, and learning, globally, there were other emission reduction programs in place that we relied on and drew from a little bit, but we were really at the forefront of developing Alberta's system at that time. It was really exciting. I can talk about Alberta because, like I said, we have a regulated trading system in Alberta. So there's very clear project types that are eligible to generate offset credits. When the system started, there was a lot of focus on agriculture and different practices in farming and livestock rearing that would result in greenhouse gas emission reductions. There's a lot around waste, which is interesting for the REAC project that we're talking about, because when waste goes to a landfill, often methane is created, and that is a very potent greenhouse gas. So, you can reduce that by composting or by landfilling or treating the waste differently. So there are a few different actions there that could be generating greenhouse gas credits. As well, there are a few related to different aspects of our oil and gas industry. So there might be injection, like the oil and gas industry. People might be aware of carbon capture and sequestration, where you're putting CO2 back underground, but there are already practices in industry where they might do that for other reasons. So they could capture maybe a portion of their emission reductions if it's additional from some of those activities. And as well, we have some protocols around renewable energy generation, of course, so solar and wind. There's a very generic one for building efficiency. So if you are improving maybe the insulation or operation of a building and reducing your energy use that way, you can possibly get credits from that. So yeah, there's a whole gamut. So the specific rules and oversight of a carbon credit system are what will eventually tell you what the impact will be. So if you have clear reviews and third parties checking that things are working as they're supposed to, that all those principles I talked about earlier, that those are being followed properly and adhered to, then I'm comfortable saying that we're really just using an economic indicator like the price on carbon to drive activity that we want to see, which is reducing emissions, often somewhere where it's not economical to do so, or it's not it wouldn't otherwise be done. So we are just using that very common pricing that we see in our markets all the time to drive um, behavior or outcomes that we want to see by adding a price to something. So from that, outside idea, putting a price on carbon simply should change behavior and change priorities within certain aspects of the market. But to really drive, are we creating an impact, and are the impacts that are being reported the right scale and the right amount? That really comes down to how well that system, like I said, is managed, what kind of oversight there is, what kind of the different actors in the system, because you'll have your buyer, you have your seller, and then you have your registry, or maybe your in between marketer that is trading. They're like, the platform that is trading the credits. They all need to be motivated to have high impact and not making money as their motivation for doing that work. And often, I think what's come out in the last few years is that reputational risks of not doing it properly can really impact it. So I think we've turned a corner on a lot of carbon offset projects and claims, because initially I think a lot of people were willing to make the claims without doing the deeper dive work or making sure that all those checks and balances were in place. And it did come back, to be a bit critical of some of the systems, which is fair. That's the system working, right? We want to be able to call things out and say, hey, this practice isn't correct, or you claimed this, but when we went and actually looked, that wasn't actually happening. So I don't think that those hiccups in any way negate the fundamental benefit of what carbon offset systems can do. And ultimately, we'll just keep getting better and better at really measuring that impact. And from an overall perspective, I would say we need to accept that in order to make a difference, in order to be additional and pay for carbon offsets that are going to yield a real impact and the results we want, they can't be $1 a ton.